Hi, my name is Ellie Dashwood, and today we'll be going over 3 novels you may love if you like Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey. Northanger Abbey is one of Jane Austen's lesser-known works, and in fact it's quite a deviation from her other books like Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. It's essentially Jane Austen meets murder mystery. Or was there a murder? The story follows young Catherine Morland, who's about 17-18 years old in the story. Catherine Morland is a very young and naive girl who loves gothic romances. Now during Jane Austen's times, these books were very popular, and they were essentially the 1800s version of, well, Twilight. They had ghost girls, damsels in distress, and over the top, like, oh, I love you romances. And Catherine Morland eats them up in this book, which feeds her already extremely vivid imagination. So while she is in Bath, she makes a lot of friends, both good and bad, including Henry Tilney, who is a very dashing young man, and of course sparks her interest immediately. He invites her to stay with them at their country house called Northanger Abbey, and that's where the book gets its title, and it's this old Gothic looking abbey that sparks her imagination to think, oh, like all these romance novels I was reading with all these like ghosts and ghouls and murders and mysteries are happening here at Northanger Abbey. And so this book is really kind of like how she lets her imagination run wild and gets her in a little bit of trouble. I also really love this book because it delves into friendship and what is a true friend versus a false friend. It delves into reality, like what is a novel and how is that different from reality. Some of the best quotes from Jane Austen about novels comes from this book, and they're actually from Henry Tilney in the book. And it's just really great. And it is sort of like the Jane Austen mystery novel, which is great. And she should write more mystery novels because this one's pretty good. And if you've never read this book, you may have seen the movie, or if you've read the book but not seen the movie, you should. It's from the early 2000s, I think. And it stars J.J. Field and Felicity Jones, and I love this adaptation of Northanger Abbey. It's incredibly done. It catches the spirit of the book very, very well. And of course, it has J.J. Field in it, and he's super cute, so you should go watch it. And I mean, J.J. Field has like one of the best voice ever, and it's not just his awesome British accent. I mean, I just love his voice, and he's just cute, so go watch Northanger Abbey if you have not already. So if you like Northanger Abbey or the idea of Jane Austen meets murder mystery, I would suggest Midnight in Austenland by Shannon Hale. Now, Midnight in Austenland is the sequel to Austenland. I think it's debatable whether you need to read the first Austenland book to really appreciate this one, because Austenland and Midnight in Austenland have 2 completely different main characters. The only reason this is a sequel is this other character also goes and visits Austenland, which is a sort of tourist attraction experience where rich women can go and pay to live for a couple of weeks in this old Regency house and dress up in empire waisted gowns. And they also have actors there playing dashing suitors and pretending to sort of play out their own Jane Austen romance while they're there. And it's supposed to be this very sort of nice and controlled atmosphere where they drink tea and they go for walks in the park, and it's all very innocent and fun. However, in the sequel, Midnight in Austenland, it follows the main character, Charlotte Kinder, who is a 30-something, recently divorced woman whose kids are going to go stay with their father and his new wife for the summer. And so she doesn't really know what she's going to do with herself while they're gone. And so, having just finished reading all of Jane Austen's work, she finds out about Austenland and decides to go visit there. And she's looking for just a nice escape. The only problem is, she's pretty sure she saw a dead body somewhere in Austenland. Who would have thought that's gonna happen? And so the rest of the book is sort of dealing with, did she see a dead body? Is she just trying to avoid dealing with all her issues? And it's just a really great, like Northanger Abbey, mystery meets Jane Austen era. And of course it has a really, really sweet romance in it. I absolutely love it. And it got a little bit of Mansfield Park in this book here too. But I would definitely suggest reading this. And Shannon Hale is a great author. She writes a lot of young adult novels. You may be familiar with stuff like Princess Academy and Goose Girl and a lot of other young adult novels that I like too. She's a great author. I also really like this novel because it deals with other themes such as fear and, you know, being too nice versus standing up with yourself. And even though I'm not anywhere near being a 30-something divorced woman with kids, I still really felt like I identified with the character even more in Midnight in Austenland than I did in the original Austenland. In the original Austenland, the girl kept being like, I'm so embarrassed that by my, you know, love of Jane Austen. And in this one, she doesn't have that, because I'm like, I'm not embarrassed of my love of Jane Austen. Everyone should love Jane Austen. What's wrong with you if you don't, you know? But, so that's why I like this one. And also, if you've seen Austenland the movie, but you haven't read Austenland the book, I suggest reading the book, because the book is way, way different from the movie. So the second book I would recommend if you like Northanger Abbey or Jane Austen Meets Murder Mystery would be The Secret of Pembroke Park by Julie Klassen. Now, this is a very, very old used copy, and honestly, it's from the library, and that's why it looks like this. But if you ignore how wrinkled it looks, which it was not my fault, it was the library, but it was really, really good. And I liked it because it wasn't just a romance novel. Like when I first started reading it, I'm like, I don't like romance novels where their whole point is romance. And I could do a whole other video on what is a romance novel and what is not a romance novel, because as contrary to what people say, Pride and Prejudice is not a romance novel. But back to the point of this book. This follows a young woman named Abigail Foster, and she lives in Regency, England. And if you don't know what Regency, England is, go check out my Dashy Notes episode 4 on what is Regency, England. And pretty much what happens is her family loses their wealth. But an unknown rich relative says, hey, I have this old manor house, come move into it and keep it up for us for a while. And so they do. But once they get there, they discover not all is as it seems. There's all this talk of murder and secret treasures and people sort of searching the house for the secret treasure and the whole backstory to it. And of course, all the little surrounding villagers get really weird about stuff, and she's like, what's happening here? So of course there is romance in this book, and I really loved it. It's a very good, clean romance book too. But it also has to deal with her figuring out what is the secret of this house. Why is everything so weird? And once again, very Northanger Abbey. Julie Klassen writes a lot of books that are sort of romances set in this era. So if you're interested in that, you should go check out her book. This is the only one I've read from her so far, but I really liked it. And it had good character development and everything, so check this out. So the third book I would recommend if you like Northanger Abbey is And Only to Deceive by Tasha Alexander. This is actually the first book of a series where this main character investigates different murders and mysteries in each book. The very first book, we get to meet her as Lady Emily Ashton, who's the very young, very, very wealthy widow in Victorian England of a count, or actually he's a viscount who's recently died. And she's just coming out of Victorian mourning, which is one of the wonderful things about this book I love, is it makes Victorian England and its manners and its culture seem so real and so relevant. You can almost imagine living there. And so she does a wonderful job of world building. The main character, Lady Emily Ashton, is a very strong and independent woman, but at the same time she still loves the clothes and going to balls, which I love, because while being a strong independent woman is great, you also need to go to the balls. And that's where you're going to meet all the really cute guys, as she does in this book. Well, actually she meets them in places other than balls, but you should still always go waltzing in the books. Anyway, while it does have romance, a lot of it is really mystery based, and it's also a very self-development book. The main character is developing a lot and coming to realize that she just doesn't have to be a society lady, but she can have academic interests and other things like that. But it really does a great job of combining the whole murder mystery with the very, awesomeness of Victorian England, and I love it, and you should check it out. I wish they would make a movie of this series. Like, the BBC should seriously make like a mini-series or like a TV show based on these books. If you know anybody who runs BBC, you should tell them this idea. It'd be brilliant. So that has been my 3 book recommendations today for if you loved Northanger Abbey. And I hope you will check one of them out, if not all of them, and come back and watch my other videos. You can also find me on Twitter at Ellie Dashy, also on Facebook, Instagram, I love Instagram. I think that's my favorite social network. So if you're gonna follow me anywhere, go follow me on Instagram. And also Pinterest. I pin a lot of Jane Austen pictures. So if you love Jane Austen pictures, go follow me on Pinterest. We'll be great friends. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and have an awesome day.